send you to the guy. And he's read 90 Rajneesh books. And this happened at that time when, because Rajneesh, I think it was 82 or 83 when he got into real trouble with the Indian government and started that big muddy in Oregon that eventually fell apart. They, oh gosh, it really deteriorated badly to even poisoning a salad bar and other things like that. Meanwhile, he got into the United States on medical, and when his medical thing was over, he overstayed his visa. And when he flew trying to get back to India, he had a change of planes in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is quite a big hub. And the FBI, or no, immigration, was standing there waiting on him to put him in handcuffs. Okay, so this was by 85, I think, or something like that. So a couple of years in the States. He eventually gets back to India, but then by 1991 or so, he's dead. And the story that went around it was from AIDS. But some of the scandals that they had is that he ordered a brand new dentist chair from America, but he didn't want to pay duty on it, so he told his people to beat it up before you package it and send it to India so he can get reduced duty. And the reason he wanted the dental chair was so he could purchase nitric oxide, laughing gas, so he could have the laughing gas and he could get it because he had a dental chair. This is, I mean, that sounds really Republican too, doesn't it? But anyway, back to the time, that 80 and 81, that was, I would say, Rajneesh's high point. That was his heyday. And that this guy's got, I mean, what he says about himself is probably written in one of Rajneesh's books that he read. Sure. And that I find it illegitimate. If he had said, maybe he's just embarrassed that he had his experience while following Rajneesh, and so he's embarrassed to claim Rajneesh as a teacher. By not having Rajneesh as a teacher, he's left with stiff. So,
okay, so this whole goes into a whole, for me, the more modern context of it is that, like, or I should say contemporary or whatever, but this thing, so in this movement, this little pragmatic Dharma bubble, it's like 1,000 people. It's not, it's not that come and go. It's not like a huge thing, but it's...
Hey, 1,000 in America, that would be huge.
Well, there are. I mean, it's on the internet, but this is how we source your students now, from Reddit stream entry and Dharma Overground, right? Or whatever. But,
actually, it's a good fertile field. They've been there, done that on some of this.
Yeah, and so the pragmatic Dharma started as a counter to this soft, dogmatic, hyper-accepting Buddhism that came to America, via some of the popular teachers. And then when this guy, Daniel Ingram, said, these perceptual shifts are real, and they do help out a lot, that was very inspiring for a lot of people. Later, he said, actual freedom is real, and it's the next stage beyond what I've got. It's that not only am I spacious around my emotions, but I can actually remove my emotions. So what I'm getting at is there's been a lot of theories about this guy, Richard, in Australia, and there's a lot of different things moving around about it, and for me, it's just very plainly obvious that the method doesn't work, and also that no one can replicate what he did anyway, so none of it works.
Okay. Well, let me say this then, because we can work with this, and that is that I could say that what I've learned from Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and co., because this is actually quite a group effort. And I would go so far as to say also that the grooming of any monk is a group effort
Mm-hmm.
from the other monks at the temple. That ordaining in becoming a Buddhist monk is a big deal. It is a complete change of life. And they guide you and they nurture you and they bring you food and sneak it under the table and all kinds of stuff to help you out along the way, as well as guiding you into the right mental context. And so, as a Sotapan, I would go so far as to say, yes, we are, as Sotapan, expected to be able to change feelings. And I'll give you a really clear example of that is that when, for instance, my daughter, at age of 4, she's kind of a king. I mean, everybody loves her, and when she sometimes doesn't get what she wants, she throws a little tantrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what does a daddy do when a 4-year-old throws a tantrum? He throws one of his own. That's natural. But what I do instead, because I can control that, I will tease her instead. And teasing her brings her generally right out. But what I found was that was too much or too easy. So I scheduled it with my wife, and we talked about it in advance. I said, I'm not ever going to hit her, but I'm going to confront her with this behavior of her because she's creating a bad habit on her. And it was kind of, actually, the one episode was over a pizza. She wanted to open the box, but I had already opened it, and so she didn't want it. And so I winked at my wife and said, I don't want it either, and nobody wants the pizza. And Mom says, I'm not going to buy any more pizza. And I say, good, I don't want any. And Kitty, good, I don't want any either. But then about 5 minutes later, she's coming to apologize because I stood up to her at that point. But I was doing it not from my own feelings, because I'd already managed them, but was rather making a decision about how am I going to, deal with her, rather than passively giving in or joking with her or other than that, but to actually confront her. And so this is actually what this guy is saying that he can do. And all I'm saying is, big whoop-de-doo, that's what you're expected to do upon the path. You're expected to learn to control these feelings, to not react. Mm-hmm. That, in fact, it's part of Thai society in a really, really big way. There's a woman over at Wat Suan Mok who had been there, I think she's British, but I'm not sure. Or maybe she's American. She's been so far away for so many years that she's lost her accent, so I'm not sure where she's from. Probably the States, somewhere. Anyway, she occasionally has trouble with some of the Thai women, even though she speaks Thai very well. And she was saying that she resents the fact that the Thais will keep their station in life and not want to advance or go ahead. And I tried to then bring her back to the point of, look, you come from an American society where people are expected, kicked in the pants, and forced to try to advance. And everybody's suffering and unhappy. In Thailand, what they're teaching instead is to become comfortable and happy, not necessarily in your station in life, because Thailand is full of universities now. And they're really, really big into education. But what they're really on with is that our station in life is not economic. Our station in life is who our friends are, who our family is, who do I know. And since there's no caste system in Thailand, in fact, this country is really non-racist. That it doesn't really matter about the color of one's skin at all. Though there is some stuff about Chinese, but that's got, again, more to do with social. For instance, a lot of the problems of racism in the United States is simply because the black culture is different from the white culture. Well, the reason it's different from the white culture is because it's been suppressed and oppressed for so many hundreds of years, and so that's what they wound up with. That's not true about the difference between the Thai and the Chinese. It's much more subtle than that. But the point that I'm making is that Thailand is like a net, and that what the Thai people, as an individual, as they're taught, is that you have to learn to control yourself on the inside in order for you to control yourself on the outside, and you are obligated to do this. Well, if you think about it, that's just a restatement of the Buddha's Dharma. To learn to control your own mind so that you're out of suffering, and then you can deal with the rest of the world in a non-suffering way. So having fights and arguments public and open in Thailand is just not done. That this is a really non-violent society because of that one point. So I'm saying not only do I have it because I am trained and I'm supposed to do it special, I'm saying that no, this is cultural. That people are expected to learn to control their feelings, and it's different than they teach in America. In America, they teach the kids to suck it up. I don't care how bad you feel, you don't talk about it. Or you leave me alone, or I'm going to let you have it, And so, but rather it's the internal position. That it's not that you're supposed to feel bad and then hold it in, but it's rather that you're supposed to examine how you're relating to society so that you can feel better about how you're going to fit in. And this is cultural. So it's not, but at the level that we're talking about with the Dhamma, that's you can see, in fact, where that culture comes from, because this has been a Buddhist society for 1,300 years. And a lot of that really good stuff about Buddhism has rubbed off onto the society in the following way. That in the old days, a young man was expected to be a monk for about 2 years, starting at the age of 20. And then at the end of that time, then he could make a choice as to whether he was going to return to the lay life or stay a monk. And generally the next time that happens is about 5 years. Where people are expected to leave. But you can leave at any time depending upon the circumstances. And surprisingly enough, the worst circumstance of all to leave is because you've got a newfound girlfriend that won't leave you alone. And that doesn't happen in Thailand, but it does happen to the Western monks who come to Thailand. Why? Because the Thai women and the Thai girls are well trained to leave the monks alone. But the Western women who come to the temple, they won't leave the monks alone because they're not trained for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so all of this stuff fits in with what Free Richard is saying, except that he's trying to make it look extraordinarily special. Seems to be par for the course. And so maybe that's what's getting people, is that he's claiming he's not claiming unique talents or unique abilities or unique experiences. What he's doing is that he's claiming ordinary, actual experiences are in fact unique and exalted.
That sounds a lot like what he writes on his website, actually.
Well, that's also par for the course in the Western mind. Here's a clear example of that. If I'm angry at the bank, I'm going to describe my anger to you about the bank in such a way, and my intention is to have you also angry at my bank.
How does that relate to the ordinary
Well, what it means is that I feel so much about that bank that I've got to share not just the event, but I've got to share my internal experience with you also. And then you get into the whole concept of grandiosity, which is much more of a psychology word. In the old days, it was much more common. I think that people are more mindful of their language. But the guy can't come home and say, "Oh, I had a strenuous day and I'm a bit tired." No, he's got to come home saying, "I am exhausted."
Right.
Point of death. That a few becomes a many becomes hundreds, hundreds become thousands, and thousands become millions, and sometimes that all happens within just a few cycles of the mind, so that a few winds up being millions.
Yeah, like narcissism as well in there.
Yes, exactly so. Narcissism in the sense that I can't be an ordinary guy, I've got to be special. And so when I talk about things, I talk about it in special terms. To where if you'll reflect upon the way that I've been teaching you, all along I've been teaching you actual, ordinary, real experiences that the mind can have. That it's not exalted. Enlightenment is not an exalted state. It's a state of freedom. It's a state of non-suffering. But it's not exalted. It's not special. Especially when you're around others who are not suffering much. And if you are, in fact, in a state of non-suffering and you're around people who are suffering, you want to get the hell out of Dodge. You don't want to be around them. It's better to be around others who are not suffering much or not at all. And that comes in change of life for many different people. Can happen with AA, where the drinker, when he's really dedicated to stopping drinking, he also stops associating with all his old drinking buddies. And they wonder what happened. And he explains to them, "I'm in AA," and it just goes right over their head. They don't get it. So this is another example of that whole thing of making special something that's ordinary.
I've been having some more, I feel like maybe some alignment about what's described in Sutta 48.
Mm-hmm.
By looking at, and I told you about this technique I'm trying out, which is you imagine like being loved by these ideal parent figures.
Yes,
and
I remember you telling me about
and it's
that.
making me feel, and it's all aligned with the values that you've described of the qualities of feeling safety that's, not dependent on the outside. And as I do that, I've been relating more to and I don't know what to call it, whether it's like renunciation or sensory withdrawal, but that how can what all of this out there just not feel like that big of a deal, and then I can have this sort of feeling inside, and it's all built up from gladdening the mind as well, which I tried for about a year, quite a bit. It's not that long. I'm not saying that it's long, but
No, I heard about a year.
okay, it's not very joyful. I'm not being gladdening the mind. Gladdening the
Go
mind.
right ahead. I'm listening. Very closely, by the way.
I guess it feels like there's a need to just respond appropriately to external circumstances, and that doesn't have anything to do with what's going on inside of me. And there's still some interplay that naturally occurs, but it's not anything like the normal amount of seesawing between inside and outside. And when I think
still,
of...
it's taking the inside bad feelings and putting them on the outside, not realizing that we're only spreading suffering when we do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like small examples, like just being more disciplined in my habits and cleaner and whatever, or cleaning up my diet and taking care of my body, is none of that should have anything to do with my emotions, because my emotions are just my mind to manage and to feel joyful and feel whatever else positive qualities I want to cultivate inside. And then the external life is just to respond appropriately to, based on the conditions that I meet. And it feels like it's just not more complex than that.
I would agree. I wouldn't say it exactly like that, but that certainly fits for you. The next thing that I would say about that also is, when you were talking about those deities, that at a theoretical level, you know that when you're creating those, that it's your mind creating them, and
Sure.
that they're not real, and on the outside, there to do you a favor, that you're there to do you that favor. Okay, and that they have the same kind of thing within the Tibetan system. They call them takas.
This is from the Tibetan system as well, so...
It smells that way to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference between the smell of fish and the smell of chicken, and this is definitely a smell of Tibet. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Okay, and it comes from their Tonka tradition, but it's exactly the same thing. And in a way, it's, let us say that if it works for a student, it's a really excellent thing, because the only other thing that his mind would be doing, other than thinking about how marvelous these deities are and these Tonkas, is to have his mind back in hindrances again. But this is actually a very pleasant state, and they can be taken into jhana if that's where you want to go. But they can also make the mind fit for work. That is a tool. That I tell people that all the time. I probably told you about that. One of the ones that I had was actually an island paradise. It was taken, the visualization was a perspective from the sea, and it had beach, and it had palm trees and that kind of stuff, and that memory stayed with me from basically, I would say, the middle 1970s, and voila, here I am. I'm on that island paradise. So that was a visualization that I had, and pleasant visualizations are also quite commonly used in hypnotic techniques and hypnotic suggestions.
Yeah.
That in a way, a guided meditation is nothing but a hypnotic induction.
Mm-hmm.
But more people are susceptible to it because you call it meditation rather than, if you call it hypnosis, people say, whoa.
So I think, I guess, I would assume that this is sort of something like that. I guess what I'm saying is I hope I'm on to something, because I'm trying to understand what's being pointed to in Sutta 48, because because I want that, just because it sounds like, that person is that bhikkhu is, or whatever, is functioning and happy, has the whole package, not just some internal state of transcendence, but also external functioning woven in with that.
Absolutely, yes. And you can see that, in fact, what the Buddha is actually talking about is the religious zealot's experience based in right view, as opposed to a religious zealot who is based in wrong view, like a jihadist. That in fact the goal of the jihadist and the goal of the meditator is exactly the same. except one is taking the wrong approach by thinking that if they can kill off all of the infidels and raise a caliphate, and then everybody will behave the same, we'll all be Muslims and we'll all be happy together. That's their goal and that's their idea, and yet you cannot find that particular thing happening anywhere in the Middle East or anywhere within the Islamic civilization, because they're too busy everywhere trying to purify. So what's going to happen when they win the whole world and they've got a caliphate, etc., like that? Are they not going to continue their purges, trying to make it more and more perfect by killing more and more people? It's just so ridiculous. But so it's a misguided, but the zealotness is there in the sense of the dedication to the path. Only here our dedication to the path is not with an ultimate goal of relieving suffering. It has this moment's immediate goal of reducing suffering, and let tomorrow take care of itself.
Yeah. I think I'm noticing there's just some things that some areas of functioning externally that I just simply need to respond appropriately to a level that's good enough, and that needs to happen somewhat until there's a degree of confidence, I guess, that's occurring, and then I've had the experience that my emotions have been heavily intertwined with all of this for a long time now, and that's starting to disentangle. So it seems like I'm emphasizing that.
Do you remember me talking about the 3 P's?
Practice, performance, play.
Performance, and
very
play?
well, yes.
Okay. You're very much now in that performance mode.
Oh, okay. All right, but I have to follow that through.
You also recognize that it will become habit forming, so that becomes, then your whole life becomes much more playful.
Okay, all right. So I just have to keep performing, though, because...
Right, exactly. Yeah. You got to keep slugging that axe, to use a musician's term.
Okay. And then there's also the fruit, the gold, and the diamond, of course.
Well, that's when you get the idea that you're better than everybody else, and you've got a good reason for giving yourself the idea that you're better than everybody else. You know what that is? You are.
Right. You're more well-trained.
Get over it.
Right.
Why are you better than everybody else? Because you're mindful, you're careful, and you're not behaving badly. That's what makes things, that's what the diamond. And so as your mindfulness improves, even to the point of it becomes a habit forming, that still is part of the formation of that diamond. And there has to come a time when you recognize when that diamond's getting in the way, and whether you can either put it away or throw it away. But that takes another level of mindfulness, you see, because most people, they get really, really proud of being really, really good.
Yeah.
One of the dangers about doing that is that then we start looking at how, we're still in the level of comparing. That's the issue, is that we have to come out of that comparing, and when we do, that's the throwing away of the diamond, to where we're not interested in comparing ourselves to others. But you will go through the phase of, I'm not interested in comparing myself to others, but if I did, I'd be winning every time.
Yeah. That's the transition. So, another thing that's come up for me is, like, if I just look very clearly at things, it's like I can see that it all sucks. It's all pretty shitty. And that helps me, because then I can look at all the things I've done which have gotten me to the point of being in the gutter in certain ways, and how I've come out of it. And it seems like before I was in a labyrinth with all these different paths, and now they're closing off, so there's just one way forward, which is just the, this way of operating that we're talking about.
Another way of looking at that is that it's partially the eradication of the doubt, in the sense that when we're in doubt, we're like in a labyrinth and we don't know which gateway to go. But we start closing those doors by saying, been there, done that. And then the real path becomes really, really clear, because we know what is not the path. And that's what you're coming to. And I would say congratulations for that.
Thanks, yeah.
To understand what is not the path.
but what's interesting is, like, it's not hard, because there's no other choice, right?
Exactly, that's what I say. It is a matter of seeing. Once you see, the way to go is easy.
But when I was doing, when I was working with you, last year, it was somewhat more of a faith, I guess you could say, or trust, because I could see incremental improvements, but it was still hard, Whereas now it feels like I still it's like, do a. But it was like now it's just like, I'm not going to just stab myself anymore or whatever.
I'm not going to do it anymore, right. So, if you have time, I would recommend that you reread MN 22, where the Buddha is talking about the moat is filled in, the banner is lowered, the crossbar is gone, the bolt. If you'll review that, you'll begin to really understand more and more about what the deeper part of the path is the fact that we don't. Because we're not stabbing ourselves anymore, we're not wounded anymore. And because we're not wounded anymore, we don't have to protect ourselves anymore.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That makes sense. And I remember you going over that. There was a lot of different symbols in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In another place, I'll see if I can locate it, the English version is clear as a polished shell, or pure as a polished shell. And in that, I would refer to like mother of pearl, to where it doesn't have any blemishes. That's a lot of what the Buddha is talking about. In fact, the Sabha Asava Sutta, of all of the impurities and how to manage each one of them. So that's another one to look at. However, I think that in regard to the Sabha Asava Sutta, you might in fact have already gone through, without having them enumerated in front of you, you might have already gone through those, or some of them. So it'd be good for you to go and read that sutta, reflecting it in that regard.
All the taints?
Yeah, all the taints. Sabha Asava number 2, Majjhima Nikaya.
Okay.
Because just like number 48, it can be a real eye-opener, in the sense of, wow, I didn't know about that, or wow, I've been there, done that. I'm really, and the one that probably floored me, you see, I've known about that sutta number 48 for many, many years. I've known all about it, and I've even referenced it, but what I did was I went back to read it, because the part that I had remembered was about the fact that the monk is willing to look at what he's done wrong. He's willing to confess it to his elders, not to the police, but to his trusted friends, that he's open. But it was the later stuff after, because I think that's number 4. And then number 5 and number 6, and they start slapping me until I get to the number 7. And there at the end, in the Pali, is Dhammarato. Glad in the Dhamma.
Glad in the Dhamma?
Glad in the Dhamma.
Glad in the Dhamma, yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, right. That you're glad in the Dhamma. You're happy to be here. You finally got the Dhamma. It really, So that's where the happiness is. That's the fruit of Sotapan. Is the joy.
The fruit, yes.
That's the fruit of the final fruit.
Okay. The thing that seems like the hard part, so to speak, is...
That is. That's exactly correct. After that, it's just down. It's just a play after that.
Well, but...
Going from Sotapan to Arahat is a choiceful decision to make.
Yes, okay, right, because you keep... Now, and that's starting to make sense to me. I actually should probably try to give you my new way I've been thinking about the fetters as well. But the strength is the part, though. That means you can actually do the right thing, even though you have these memories of it hurting a lot, right?
Exactly so. To really paying attention to things as a Dhamma. That's why I have been using sometimes the word gung-ho.
Gung-ho being...
Yeah, gung-ho for the Dhamma. Because you'll have people that are gung-ho for the military, or gung-ho for a football team, or gung-ho for Allah. Some Christians are even gung-ho. But in all cases, they're gung-ho for do this so that you can get that reward. And in this case, we're doing good because that is the reward.
Yeah. Maybe, could I share briefly the way I've been trying to rework just for my own mental exercise, like playing with it to internalize it more effectively, so...
Right. And you probably haven't vocalized it to anybody before, so this is your first vocalization.
All right.
Right?
Yeah, so for one is for the Eightfold Path, and the other one be for the fetters. The Eightfold Path just being, and these are all from you, of course, but that view, and then view is seeing clearly, motivation is formulating some intentions, or, it's whatever unfolds from that seeing, action-wise, and then, I guess right speech would be more like right thought, and then thought turns into action, and then those pattern to become lifestyle, and then out of right lifestyle, that becomes the vessel through which mindfulness and concentration can develop.
No. The mindfulness is a skill that was pre-developed, that you need mindfulness
To fulfill that.
And in order to build right view.
Okay. So there...
And the Buddha says is that, therefore, right view and mindfulness and right effort run and circle around each other. And when we're talking about right effort, we're also talking about it in the sense of right intention or right thought. And the right thought then gives us right speech, and then right livelihood, and then, right action and right livelihood. But that those are the prerequisites for right noble concentration.
Okay.
Right noble concentration is restated as unification of mind. That's the real trick, is when the mind is one. No more doubts, no more labyrinths, no more decision making. That you know what is suffering and what is not suffering.
Okay. And then for the fetters, like, it seems like in reverse, if you like the higher 3, the high 10, there are like very elemental qualities. They're very subtle remnants trace elements left in the mind.
Right. Exactly.
So ignorance, some sort of uncertainty or some sort of not seeing could lead to searching, that element of restlessness or motion, and then that can lead to contact with solidity, which is that conceit, that initial sense of...
Right. Comparing.
Yeah.
So you got it. Exactly.
And then
you need to write that down. That's
I did write it down, and then the next, after there's contact, there's that first grab, and that's that clinging without object that you've translated it as. And then clinging without object turns into the sort of most subtle objects constructed that we cling to, which I think you've described as more like psychological structures at a deeper level, or that kind of thing. And then comes the more grosser emotional patterns, and out of that, personality, sense of solidity, and mishandling of morality and such at the later level.
Exactly so. So you can see then, in that regard, that the cause and effect relationships that you're working through, you're making your own map. And that map fits reality as best you can, which in the older days, years ago or last year, your construction of reality in the mind was not nearly as close to reality in the mind as it is now. That you're moving by investigation of the mind, you're moving the mind closer and closer to actual real reality.
Are the fetters like dependent origination? Not, probably not, right?
The dependent origination is the way that the mind first develops and then becomes habit, the fetters.
Okay.
And that by watching the Paticca way that your mind works, you begin to see how the mind works, and the fact that it is a mind working, and that while the mind is working, it's not in reality. It's missing real reality while it's processing. So the less processing we do, then the more close we are to be here now.
Okay.
However, we need to do some. The right way is to do the balance. And in fact, the Baghdadi Sutta is the place where the guy pesters the Buddha. This is really, really early. I would say probably within the first 10 or 20 years of the Buddha's, where this guy begins to think that he is enlightened, but then he hears about Gautama, so that he goes to visit Gautama, and he insists on asking a question, and the Buddha knows who this guy is, and he understands the question and knows that he needs to spend the time with this guy to fully explain it. So he says, now is not the time, bend about is not the time. But the guy keeps pressing him, and so the Buddha gives him just this one thing. Let the scene be merely the scene, and let the herd be merely the herd. Now, this guy's got enough meditation skills that he understands exactly what that means, and that is that he stops at the level of consciousness and does not mentally proliferate. All right? Doesn't mentally proliferate. Well, one of the things that we mentally proliferate is feelings, like the feeling of danger. Later that day, this guy gets killed by a cow who has a calf, but he doesn't sense the danger because he is mentally stopping the proliferation as the Buddha recommended. It's a very interesting sutta.
I know it, yeah.
Yeah, and so the Buddha goes through a whole big deal about getting this guy with a good send-off, because this guy really got it. But and this is one of the several examples that I know of about when someone becomes an arahat, they need to be protected by other monks, or they in fact will do something that will not be intentionally suicidal, but it winds up being that way.
Yeah.
Because they're not seeing the danger in things. They're too overjoyed with the reality of the moment to not. So basically, yeah, you could say they're not throwing caution to the wind because they don't have any caution to throw.
Right.
And so this is kind of dangerous, and a lot of students don't understand that while becoming an arahata is possible, that may not be the best goal for one, that you can in fact stay back and be of service to your family or to your students or whatever, because if you gate, paragate, samgate, gone beyond, that means you're not real. And that was one of the things that was unique about the Buddha, is he recognizes that there is nobody else to teach. If he doesn't do it, nobody else can. And so that's why he decided to teach. He had found something that was worthy of teaching. But most arahats don't have that thought. They'll have that thought, well, let some of my students do the teaching now. I'm heading for the hills.
Right.
I'm out of here. So the arahat is the one who wants only seclusion. And there may come a time when, probably in later life, and that this is what I found in Thailand is that men will become monks early in life, spend a few years at it, disrobe, go off and have business, and then come back and become a monk, reordained, and they're high quality already. They're ready for ordination. Almost as ready for, as high quality as if they had been monks all of that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's common in Thailand. Or something that's even more common in Thailand is that man may not come back and robe up. He may not become a monk, but he lives an enlightened life as a retired man, letting his family completely take over, and he can enjoy his old age. And that's very much what I've been able to accomplish here with my family. So I don't have any responsibilities. I can just hang. True retirement, the kind that even retirees in America cannot stomach. And so we have that kind of choice. How far are we going to go and at what age? The real issue is can I come to be that zealot of the end of suffering? Can I live the life of a Sotapan? Because if the life of a Sotapan, then all kinds of things are available to us that were not available as ordinary humans, including having a happy life of almost any choice, except that we do not choose to harm others. We do not choose to do things unscrupulously, but we can still drive a hard bargain. So this is an important quality, is that top of the heap, or the real climb, is the climb to that place where we have the strength to live the Dhamma. So we have the strength.
And that just seems to me like just seeing, like, again and again, just being like, there's not another option. It doesn't exist.
Exactly.
There's lots of other options, but they just all go backwards, around and around into the all of it.
Exactly. So they're really not options anymore. They used to be options, but because they were options, that's what kept the mind cloudy and doubt. Too many options. Now, in psychology, what happens is that people who are really, really suffering, they do not have any options for getting out of the suffering. Once they learn some new options, part of the real issue is to close off some of the old options that were really ineffective and need to be closed. And so we're constantly opening new doors and closing old ones as we're progressing right through the Dhamma. And so, yes, I really congratulate you. I really like to hear what you've got to say in that regard. Congratulations. It's part of the path.
Thank you.
When you're on it. That's it. And so you can also begin to understand that when you do, in fact, understand your own mind, and do understand your own path, that you actually are, as I had said, beyond training. You don't need to be trained because you've got enough tricks, I guess would be if you were going to do it from the animal show pony kind of perspective, is that if you've got, a few basic skills, that's all that we really need. And so there comes a time when there's no more work to do. That part of the skill set that we have to be developed is also our environment, so that we can control our environment. And that's actually, as you might guess, quite easy to do at the right temples in Thailand. To learn to control the environment that you're in, so that things are not political and they're not dangerous or whatever like that. To where that's harder to do in the real world, like at Amazon, for instance, that there are people who do not live at the quality that you live, and that you have to be mindful of their behaviors also, so that you can navigate to make Amazon a very safe, comfortable place for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like learning to swim where the sharks aren't right now.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I think I should try to go to work.
Well, I really like this conversation. This has really been good, and I'm really pleased to hear what you had. Let's do one last thing then, and let's get back to that article.
Yes.
And that is, Daryl was the one who put me onto that, and he also mentioned about that tagline about theory. I do not want this thing to get lost as answer number 23 or 91 or probably, 31 or so as a response to that first one, but rather to start this as a new thread, even if you have to give it a new title.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't put any of this into the replies.
Yeah, this is not a reply. This is a new thread.
Sure. No, I can. I was planning on doing that anyway. I can also bump it up by once every week, just making another comment. Just keep it up to the top. So.
Oh, I see.
That's basic advertising strategy.
Yeah, you can do that too. That would be good. Because keeping this up to the top would be beneficial for a lot of people. But it also may spark a lot of argument. Because this really does hit pretty close to people's belief systems in one way or another. I've covered enough to where you can get enemies from all sides.
That's fine.
All right, well, good luck with that. I'm really, really pleased. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you.
I'll talk
all right.
to you whenever you want to again.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye, Norm.
Bye.
Thank you so much. We'll see you.